guys, we're going to start with KStudio and their project Lignon. Are you ready, Konstantinos?
Thank you very much. So,
timer on.
Let's see how this works now. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We're going to be doing this speech in English so we can be more inclusive. And I will start by thanking the organization for inviting us and making this initiative. I hope this doesn't count against my time.
This is 89 minutes.
So,
we need 8.
Let me present first myself. I'm Konstantinos Karampatakis. I'm one of the 2 partners of KStudio. And over the last 2 decades, we have been experimenting, testing, trying to create a design which is rooted to location. And this is a very good testament for us to present to you today. It's called Lignon, which is... how do we play the video now?
Next, green.
Haha. So Lignon is the house of Metaxa, or the home of Metaxa, which is a Greek spirit formed in Samos, in these beautiful terrace plateaus of Samos, where the owner, Spyros Metaxas, was cultivating its grapes in order to make this brandy, this Greek brandy. And he wanted to find the idyllic place, a place which is casted in sun, so it's south-facing plateaus, and all these steep terraces allow for the water to drain naturally through the plateaus and not on the grapes. Now, when we were invited to do the house of Metaxa, it was a very interesting task for us because we got to get to know a lot more about the brand. A very interesting thing about the brand is that they're very secretive about the recipe. So we didn't have that to start what is the idea behind the recipe, but we tried to catch the essence, what is the feeling of having this drink. So we experimented a lot with the spirits, and we spent a lot of time in their cellar, and they were very generous with the aged versions, the ones that you cannot really get unless you're invited. And we understood the beauty of the space. These old plateaus, they were man-made, crafted, almost like artisan-crafted topographies where grapes were cultivated. So it had an architecture to itself. And we wanted to respect this beauty and this architecture, which had the origins of Metaxa casted throughout. So the idea of the man-making efforts, the time that is needed to make a grape all the way through the process until we have this beautiful sense of smell before we taste it, was something that we wanted to bring. Now, we're very lucky. Greece is a beautiful country, and we're usually invited to work in beautiful places. So we can do absolutely nothing, and it will already be beautiful. The problem is when you start doing something that it must not compete, but it must work with the landscape. And this was what we wanted to do. So the whole architecture, the materiality, and the design language was based on these beautiful terraces which were found there. And the roughness of the stone was something that it was imperative to the project. So at the end, we wanted to create a design which was seamlessly blending with the topography. We didn't want to create a museum, but we wanted to create a museum. Now, small difference in letters there, but by taking some things out, like the M from the museum, we wanted to take out all the exhibits. We didn't want to have an artifact museum that would have to be read through, but we wanted to have a journey through these plateaus where people would emerge, sense, feel, and have the juxtapositions of being happy, being positive, and having the idea of entering the landscape. Now, the journey is a journey which is a very relaxing journey and welcomes the guests from the top entrance all the way through a series of spaces which actually allow the guests to have the ideas of being embedded into the landscape, start to feel how it is to be immersed within the root system and see the story from the inside out. And then you have these pockets, these moments where the building opens itself and the guests from these dark moments come out to the light. Now, this is something that we try to capture the idea of opening a barrel where age and time has done the evolutionary process from being embedded into a confined space into an open space. And this is what we wanted to create with these paths. Now, we're doing well with time, so I'm going to take it a little bit more slow. This is a series of paths that we've formulated in the landscape, quirkily and carefully placing moments. Not spaces, but moments, because what was made out of space was a juxtaposition of areas where you have interior spaces and outside spaces. Now, the outcome was not to compete with the landscape, but to work with the landscape. And that was a repeated theme that we wanted to remind ourselves. So every detail that was casted into the project was done with elements that we found on the site. Not only to highlight the environmental aspect of keeping things in the family, not importing many things, but also by creating architectural techniques that have been tested through time, allows for the building to drain naturally. It doesn't compete with the existing landscape, but it works with it. Therefore, when it has a nice rainfall, it doesn't change the natural water formation. So it doesn't destroy the landscape, but it works with it to create a unique space. Now, what we wanted to do is to allow the guests to be immersed in this experience and walk through the buildings. So you walk from the outside where you sense and smell the nice aromatic plants, which are part of what is going into the metaxa drink, and you walk through the meandering corridors, and at some point you enter this sand-embedded room. And this is to remind ourselves, to root ourselves, what is the actual trick of the metaxa. It's not the grape itself, but it's the root system that has to be at least 100 years old before it is used within the drink. Which was a very good cue for us when we tried to explain why we needed so much time to design the building. We explained that the process is like a fine wine. You have to allow it. Sometimes the architect needs to spend enough time and understand what this feeling is in order to create not a design which follows form or function, but a design that follows emotion. And this is a very emotional journey. So I hope I convinced enough of you to visit Metaxa, and I think most of you are above 18, so I can say cheers and taste what a barrel of Metaxa feels 40 years in time. Because it's quite a special moment of having something which is timeless. And this is what we wanted to do with this design, is have a design which is not capturing a moment in time, but it could be done 100 years ago, or it can be done 100 years in the future. And which is something that we also wish for the Metaxa brand to find its way in the next millennia. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Konstantinos, for this very grounding and yet emotional presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, so help me now welcome Ria on stage.
I give you this?
Yes, we'll give it to Ria from Elastic Architects, who's going to present Isla Brown and Corinthia, right?
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here today, and thank you for the invitation. How do I start that? Should I? Okay, here we are. Great. First of all, I would like to say I'm the founder of Elastic. We are a company, architectural company, that we do hospitality projects around the world. And our mentality and the way that we design is pretty specific. We create sculptures, and sometimes those sculptures are iconic and they're landmarks. Some other times, those sculptures, they're just frames that you can see the landscape through. And some other times, these are integrated into the landscape and they have a complete integration into what the landscape, what the topography has to offer. In this specific case, we had a project, a building that was existing. And when we first went on site, and I will explain the whole process as we continue in this presentation, we had in our minds Greece. And Greece is a small country full of myths and mythical creatures and history and amazing landscape. And that's the way we were raised, and that's how we grew up. And the way that we learned architecture and we were taught architecture here, it was always about the narrative and the location and the history and the culture. So the location of this building is in Corinthia. Corinthia is very close to Athens. It's like 30 minutes away from Athens. But it's quite spectacular because there is, close to there, it's actually a building, an existing building on the Corinthian Gulf. And according to the historical findings, the Corinthian Gulf was created out of a volcanic eruption that happened 27 million years ago. And that's how it happened. But according to the myths, this giant, this titan, Typhon, it was his home. And that volcano is craterless, so it doesn't have a crater. It's quite spectacular if you think about it and you put it in your mind how this building was allocated in this mythical place. And when we went on site and we saw an existing building, which was the previous hotel Heineken, it was built around the mid-70s, quite a rectangular building and modernist, very strict and strange seeing it in the center of this gulf, sitting proud, but at the same time quite dynamic. And we felt that the combination between the volcanic, the forms, these organic forms of the lava, the whole ambience and myth, and the whole experience that you could get there on the beach was not represented properly by the form of the existing building. And having the concept of the sleeping giant, we wanted to create a metamorphosis. We wanted to change the existing building into something more fluid, more organic, more, let's say, female in a way. We felt that the lava that was going down back those millions of years ago was creating our building inside out. And working closely with the operator, Brown Hotels, and 𝗬𝗲𝗍𝗲𝗸 and our team, we made bold decisions. Those decisions had to do with, let's cut the balconies, let's make curves. We kept actually the structure with the columns and the slabs, but apart from that, everything else changed. We wanted to create this encaved, mystical feeling, how it feels when you are back in this mythical era. So everything happened with curves. And the contractor was working really hard, and he was trying to find workers to produce these curves and everything that we were envisioning. And eventually he got workers that were doing boats, because these were the only people that could actually create those curves. And being as part of the construction site and walking through the construction site, I've seen workers taking selfies and pictures and feeling proud working on that. So in the process of that, and as this ended up becoming a beautiful, very organic building, Corinthia, Isla Brand Corinthia, it feels like pebbles. One is touching the other. It has angles and corners looking from east to west, capturing the sun from one side to the other and creating shades. It became a landmark, bringing back all the beauty and the feel that the people that were living in the area had when the Heineken Hotel was up and thriving, and then it was deserted. Again, it became a landmark for the area. We worked closely with 𝗕𝗂𝗶𝗁𝗍𝗍𝗍 from Archtif, where we had a very challenging process of lighting this building, and also 𝗕𝗿𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, who did the landscape and actually grew up in this place, and he loved the place. And all of those moments around the building that you can take pictures, and it feels to us like a sculpture that comes out of the Cyclades, that it has all the curves, the game of light and shadow. But when you go inside, you still have the same feel. It belongs to the building. All the formations of the ceiling, like the lava, or the amber color and the gold accent of the bar. Everything that we have done for this project, from architecture to master plan to the interiors, speak to the language of what we wanted to give as an experience to our guests, that it feels this has been a part of this era, that the eruption of the volcano happened back in the mythical times. And it's important for us that we always mention the people that we work with, and most important, the people that were the workers of this project, because they put their soul and hard work to make it possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ria. Thank you for presenting your adaptive reuse project and for showing us different functions.
Yeah.
And now moving on with
Yeah.
Praxitelis from A31 Architecture, who's going to
Hello.
present the 𝗤𝗃𝗃 residence.
Hello. Can you listen to me? Oh, yeah, fine.
Do you need the pointer?
Yep.
Here you go.
how
Next.
okay, fine. So my time starts. Hello, everybody. My name is Praxitelis KondylisOwner. I am the co-founder and principal architect of A31. And I will speak to you about
Yeah.
𝗤𝗃𝗃 residence,
There's water
residence
if
in
you want
Mykonos.
next to it.
I will try to be as
Here,
fast
and
as
there's
possible.
there next to her.
So the location, the building is located in, of course, in Greece and in the island of Mykonos, in the southern part of Mykonos, in a place called 𝗬𝗿𝗄𝗃. You all know Mykonos, of course. This is the so-called small Venice, and the plot is over there. So, what you see here is the plot itself. Just before the intervention, something like 4.5, 5 years ago, it was a beautiful plot with a southern orientation, and we had like 3, 4 focal points there, which were the Chora and the port, the sacred islands of 𝗤𝗿𝗏 and the island of Eirini. So the design process, during the design process, we were, thinking of like making one frame or breaking the frames into 3, which we finally did, in order to emphasize the different views. So one view was Chora and the port, the sacred islands of 𝗤𝗏 and Eirini. This is an important diagram, where there are 9 diagrams, like plans and sections. This is the design process that I want to speak about, which I think is very important. What you see in the first diagram, the small dashed gray space is the area that we could intervene. So the blue rectangle is the mass of the building that we placed there. Then we make a transversal section of the mass of the building into 2 parts. And on the fourth diagram, you see that we lift one part of it, so it will follow the contour lines of the plot. We'll then split the 2 masses into 5. The 3 first are where the main bedroom of the owner is, the dining room, the living room, the kitchen, and while the two other on the top level are the guest rooms. So we then change the direction. They're horizontal, as you see first. We then change the direction, and every and each one of them are going to face the 3 focal points I spoke about, which is the port, Chora, 𝗤𝗏𝗏, the dining room, and Eirini, the bedroom. What you see here on the seventh diagram is the axis. So we have 2 access points, one from the lower part, one from the upper part. And then what is very important, what we introduce here, is the atrium. Atrium has always been a key part of an architectural space from ancient Greece until today. And this is the focal point where we also place an olive tree as an element of memory and well rooted in the Mediterranean area, Mediterranean space, lands where we intervene. So those are the drawings. You see the side plan of the building, where you see on the right side the two, here they are, the two guest rooms. This is a section as well. I forgot to tell you that we also designed an an amphitheater for 60 people. You can see it here, and there is also a section here of it. This is the level 0, where you see the spaces that I spoke to you about. The living room, the dining room, the owner's bedroom, the kitchen, and of course in the middle, the atrium with the olive tree. This is an axonometric section through the atrium, where you see, oh, by the way, there's a promenade, like a staircase, which of course connects, the main building with the two guest rooms. So here you see that the building is completely integrated into the landscape. It cannot be seen from the road. This is the top view of the building. This is the entrance gate, like going down. So we enter down. So we wanted to have this transition. We go down and then we go out. So this is the main entrance where you go down, and of course there's a ramp for the car. Those are the 3 volumes seen from the front view. This is the upper entrance for the cars. And of course, this is I haven't mentioned, but also the parking lot, the parking area is also covered by a green roof. So those are different views. I'm going to go fast because this is the atrium, the interior, the atrium, and the kitchen. And this is the night view. And I would like to show you a video right now, please. Can we go with the video? There is also sounds. You can add the sounds. I hope that, okay.
Is it possible to play the sound?
Maybe it's not possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you, Praxitelis. Thank you for this wonderful presentation. Also, I think integration, landscape, and contextuality are very big titles here in Greece. Moving on, let's continue with Eirini, who's going to present the K1 Villa. Eirini from Archtify.
Hi.
The pointer is right next to you.
Oh.
To the right. Green button.
Thanks. So, okay. Thank you for the invitation. It's a nice experience being here. I'm representing Archtify. I am the founder and the lead architect of the team. We are an architect-led company, not a pure architectural office. And by that, I mean that we actually do everything from start to end by the leading of an architect, though. And we are based in Chania, Crete. So before I start with the explanation of the architecture of the villa, I think it's important for me to say a couple of things for how it was created. Starting with the owners, Belgian, cosmopolitans, people with vast experience in high-end architectural, as users in high-end architectural buildings and hospitality projects. This project started as a private resident before it changed into a hospitality project and a whole new career for them. So it's a project that it remained very personal for them and for me at the end throughout the designing and construction. And it's, okay, of course, there was an initial brief, but it changed in the process, by pictures added, little sketches, creative ideas, dreams, stories. So at some very early point, I realized that what they actually want was not just to buy an architectural design, but was to actually be part of that designing process of their property. And that was very interesting, the way that was shaped the project, because it created a need to make a concept that was very, very clear, very self-proving, so they can relate with it, they can understand it, understand the core of it, not doubt it, and go on with it. Starting with the site, of course, it's about 9,000 acre wide. It was 9,000 acre of wide land in an area outside the village of 𝗬𝗿𝗲𝗀 in Apokoronas area, with a few residences around the same area, and it was definitely a project that we had a very nice, unique plot with a nice slope towards the north, towards the sea, offering open views to the sea, offering beautiful frames towards towards the peaks of 𝗬𝗲𝗄𝗏, the mountains. So. The whole process, the whole design wanted to accept that and create a building that was quiet, integrated, and outwards looking. So the entrance is from the higher part of the plot. The volumes are revealing slowly. And they are integrating to the ground, mostly due to the use of the clay, for the cladding, the stone that was actually produced by the excavation of the plot. The core, in the core of the design is the entrance corridor that is it didn't just drive you to the house, it's actually sink into the ground, opens to an internal atrium, drives you out again towards the sea, towards the pool, and towards the sea view. So that corridor is mostly, it's mostly like walking down the plot, as I did the first time I visited it, and less driving you to enter a house. Frames of the surrounding and the connection between the inside and outside, the continuity, it was the second core value of the design. Frames are almost like camera angles, choosing little areas, little nice views, clean views, avoiding the bad neighbors. So the property has five rooms, open spaces, some hidden guest rooms underground, like little hideouts in the hillside, and that connection to the surrounding was actually amplified by the detail and the materiality that was chosen for the project. So raw materials, exposed concrete, wood, reclaimed wood, was used to bring the inside outside and create a feeling that you are living in the plot, in that natural wild space, more than in a property. Details were very, very important on this project, very improvisational. Everything, every detail was actually bent to the same rule, that of the architectural choices. Even details that are related with very practical issues like the mechanicals of the house were following the same rule of the architectural values. So that was actually the first project, and that's again due to the special kind of clients. They couldn't find what they wanted for a constructor, so they asked us to construct it. And that was, yeah, okay, it's always, we say it's important for the architect to be involved in the construction process, but that was something more. The construction creation was incremental. The problems were seen as opportunities. The design was the detailed design was changing in order to integrate and solve the issues. So until everything fell into place and created something that was the start of the core of our practice, as we now construct most of our projects up to this scale, and created one of the core values of our project of integrating design and construction to the maximum. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Eirini. Let's continue with another residential project with Alexandre, founder of Office Muto and House with a Garden.
Hello, I'm Alexandre. I'll present to you a project named House with a Garden. The project is placed on a very flat plateau, which was very exposed to the wind and overlooking the whole bay of 𝗬𝗲𝗀𝗲𝗀, an island in the Cycladic island, Sifnos. And not only that it was very exposed to the wind, but the client really loved his trees. He wanted to plant, he wanted to have fruits, he wanted to grow everything to cook. And well, we all know what is a struggle with wind in the islands, and it's even more a problem when you have plants. But what I noticed was there is a lot of 𝗕𝗶𝗿𝗀𝗀𝗀 that had a courtyard like this one, and that were providing a larger livable space for the animals to have more space to live, in sort of a protected area. And I thought it was quite a beautiful, protecting feeling that it was giving. Very simple. And so in the project, the first gesture was to create a courtyard that would protect all the trees and allow them to leave, which is also something like, to me, an essential gesture of architecture, somehow reminding the idea of framing a piece of nature, which is a comforted and protected area when it's surrounded by sometimes wild nature, in this case with strong wind and the dry landscape. The second gesture is all those volumes that are thin volumes that get attached and juxtaposed to the courtyard. And then there's all of those, let's say, openings from the courtyard to the outside and through the building. That's why there's a lot of alignment in the windows, so that you always frame the landscape. Somehow it was creating a form of oasis in the landscape. You can see how thin is the building in regards to the courtyard that allows a direct relation to nature without distancing by having like big terraces in front of your window that creates distance to the landscape. Here you see how it's overlooking the landscape. And that's the entry, where it's kind of filtered by lots of trees that were originally here. And I found it quite poetic to get it through here. And when you arrive in the courtyard, even though those pictures were taken only 6 months after it was built, you already see that nature is starting to thrive. On the right is the main building, and in front you're, let's say, framing the view to Kimolos and Milos and Poliro. And on the right, the openings are actually crossing the living room to create openings directly toward the view. Here I'd like to talk about the construction itself. The intention was to somehow find a language which matched a truth of construction. And so we found this language of layers of stone, horizontal layers, that reminded the essence of the stone building, which is a gravity stacking of the stones. And it also enhanced the horizontality of the project itself and the courtyard. In the same intention, the concrete slab is exposed because of this idea of being true to the seismic construction that we're doing today. Same time, you have those lintel above doors that, instead of being hidden, we're trying to find a simple language that really expresses the essence of what it means to build. You can also see the small, how do you call it, gargoyle, I think, which is bringing water from the roof to the water tank, but in a visible manner rather than to hide it. Here you see the horizontality of the building, which, what is funny, I think, is that the courtyard is a very strong gesture, a square thing, quite powerful, that allows you to make any composition around, and it's quite flexible. If you add a building, if you remove one, it still works. But at the same time, then from the exterior, it's rather banal. It doesn't look like a perfect square as a courtyard does, which doesn't bring much attention. You can see it in the landscape. Here, still talking about construction, you can see sticking out of the wall small stones which were here waiting for another wall and another building that was supposed to be built here. But through the process, we decided not to build it. And so you have still the windows, the door, sorry, of the entrance, and the stone attachment. And we liked the idea of keeping it. Why? Because we liked the idea that a building is going to evolve through time, and there's going to be addition, there's going to be removal, there's going to be degradation, and it will carry memory. And in this situation, what I liked is to have a building which is brand new, but it's already registering the memory of the design process and the construction and the way the builder stacked the stones. It's trying to express what it is and carry sensitivity and positive and poetic things comes up from that. Meaning that now it's a door that opens to nothing. I like it. This is a garage with circular openings which are just completely open. That's another gutter that also tries to express the flow of the water in a place which is not very full of water. That's the living room that reminds me somehow of the 𝗕𝗿𝗵𝗵𝗶, very simple, and with a crossing window that allows to have the view directly from the courtyard to the exterior. You can see in this window, for example, there's no terrace in front of it. So when you're in the thin living room, you're always connected to the landscape, projected to it. From the design emerged very diverse views. Here you have the mountain appearing. Outside, then it opens up to the mountains. Then when you look toward the courtyard, it creates a lot of complex things. And for example, when it rains, there's water coming through the circle. You can view all the diversity of things that comes from this very simple relation of just a square courtyard and then juxtaposed building to it. This was one of the most important views for me, framing on Kymolos. And what I'm excited about is imagining when all those trees will have grown up completely, and then it will not be so much about architecture itself, but rather about its content, about the life it welcomes, the nature, the view, the framing, not so much about, hey, well, look at what I've built, but rather look at what is inside what I've built and what we're looking at. Living there, for example, I stayed there for 2 weeks, and that's a picture that I took randomly from my phone, and I was like, yeah, it's not so much about the architecture itself. When you have such landscape, it's more about the life that you welcome. Very simply. And that's only after 6 months or so. And the very simple view from a bedroom, just the fact that you can walk through the view toward the landscape as easily, that's an important quality to me, just having simple spaces that connects you directly to nature, where the architecture disappears like that. For me, that's something that matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandre. I love what you just said. It's not about the architecture itself, it's about the landscape. When you're in such a context, how can you build, or what are you going to build? So I'm going to ask you a few questions, and please feel free, like whoever wants to answer this, go ahead, before opening up the questions to the audience. Building on what Alexandre was saying, what inspires you most, all of you, about building in Greece, and how does it reflect in your work?
Who should answer?
What's the
Whoever
question?
you want, unless you want me to pick someone.
I think the Greek people should talk.
What's the question?
Okay, what inspires you most about building in Greece, and how does this reflect in your project? You can talk about your project that you just presented, or in general about your body of work.
Well, since I went first, maybe I'll take the hit.
Yes.
So I think we saw different projects which are all based in Athens, in Greece, and it definitely has a multifaceted approach to it. In terms of our approach is we try to create spaces which stimulate emotion. I mean, there's a very famous motto, form follows function, which comes from from a different part of the world. In our studio, we say form follows emotion. And definitely Greece is a country full of emotions. You can see it in its culture, in its heritage, in its stories, in its landscape. It's not so tamed. It's about the rawness and the roughness. And I think the beauty can be found pretty much everywhere. And there was recently something that we said in the office, trying to identify what is beauty. And we kind of came to that simplistic conclusion that beauty has a set of values. And one of these values in Greece, I think that we're very honest and we're very pure. And sometimes the simplicity comes in the materiality, in the geometry, in the form finding. But at the end, it's the buildings are a background allows the guests to tell the story.
Which follows also what Alexandre was saying.
Yeah, actually, I think that there's a topic which is interesting in regards to the project that we showed and the global situation of Greece in terms of the relation to the nature and Greece specifically. There's been, and don't take it as a critic to both projects, because I've also built underground buildings. I've done 2 designs like that, especially when it's a museum. It's not a problem to attract, let's say, the view. But the laws in Greece made it more easy or even preferable to build underground buildings, right, in the islands. So we can build twice more. Well, first, when I designed my 2 first underground buildings, I was excited about, oh, we don't see it much, it's underground, it's behind a wall. But at the end of the day, what I was kind of surprised with is, yes, it's hidden, but it's not banal at all. It's like, it doesn't match any houses on the island. And depending on the program, you know, you're making a museum, well, it's good to have attention, it's okay. But when you're making a house, I was, at the end, a bit frustrated. I was like, okay, I made it everything in order not to be seen. It's the least visible, but when you see it, damn, you see it. You know that this is the house of someone rich who is able to build this. So I was kind of curious about your opinions all on the idea of 𝗬𝗿𝗲𝗲𝗀𝗏. You know, is it a good thing, not good thing? What do you guys think?
Technically, what is integration within the landscape?
Hmm?
Technically, what is integration within the landscape, within the scenery? How do we want our architecture to stand out within all of this context? I think Eirini has something to say about that, because you talked a lot about framing the views also in your presentation.
Yes. Okay. Underground is a big issue, because like most of the things in Greece, started with a good idea, ended with a bad realization.
Everywhere in the world, yes.
Okay. The thing is, it's exactly what it started to encourage integrating the buildings and maintaining the surrounding, maintaining the landscape. And that was the idea of it, but it was considered mostly for the islands. Because in the islands, indeed, when you have big slopes and there is a massive need for plots, for buildings, for touristic houses mostly, and touristic developments, the effect of placing a building on the side of a hill, it's much bigger than actually placing the building in a flat plot or inside a village or a built area. So that was the idea behind it, and that was where indeed it would be good, because the area itself, the environment itself at that area is a view for somebody else. However, to encourage that, and because the cost of the construction is higher, they gave the double square meters, which actually was very interesting for the investors. And suddenly, it was it was used clearly, and it was used regardless the surrounding, regardless of the views, and it was used clearly to increase the square meters. We ended up with underground buildings in very flat plots, which is kind of funny. And at the end, yes, in these plots makes no sense, because the effect that it causes to the environment, the hole that this plot has comparing to the other plots all around, it's much more effective to the view than it would be if it was a well integrated to the built environment building. Because, yeah, okay, it respects the natural environment wherever it is untouched, but it doesn't take into account the built environment. And that's a big issue.
I think so.
Ria, in your case, it's different because you already had the building that was existing,
Yes.
and you work on adaptive reuse approach.
Exactly.
But still,
So-
there is some sort of integration.
For us, of course, when you have a landscape, right, or when you have a beautiful location and you do architecture, of course, it's about the landscape. But Greece is a place with two speeds. We do have buildings that need restoration or renovation or amendment, and we do have beautiful landscapes. And you have to adapt, and you have to work according to what you have. The way that we approach and the inspiration we get, not only for the Greek projects, but for the projects that we do globally, comes most of the times from the Greek mythology. We are very much driven by all those stories that we have heard and been taught. And when we do something in another country, we search around the culture and the history of the country, and we attach to that. But whenever we do something in Greece, we look around and we search for the mythology and not only the topography, but also the history and the narrative behind it.
Praxi,
Hello. It's my turn now?
it's your turn now.
So, what is the question? Like,
Okay.
what are the inspirations?
Yeah, we're talking about like what inspires you, obviously mostly about building in Greece. And I think the question also drifted towards integration, landscape, and I think your project also fits into that.
Yep, it's true. So what inspires, well, building in Greece, first of all, is difficult. It's very difficult. First of all, because of the regulations, which are difficult, but also because it's a very ancient country with amazing culture and tradition. So, according to my point of view, building in Greece we have to be very careful. We cannot be doing whatever we want. First of all, we don't have to be pretentious. We don't have to have any ostentation. We don't have to have any self-ambition to show off. So to start with. So all this narrative about concepts and stuff and nice stories, I mean, doesn't affect us. What we want to do is we want to integrate completely into the environment. We want to feel part of the environment, but without, and this is very important, without being mimic, not trying to swallow without changing construction methods of the past. I mean, a building has to integrate, absolutely, has to respect tradition, has to be part of the land, but without, like, using, well, you can use some, but without copying construction methods of the past. The building has to show that it is contemporary. It has to have a signature now. It has to be respectful. It has to use archetypical methods of construction, which are also in Greece and everywhere in the world, but it has to have a contemporary signature. It has to be a building of the past, having a dialogue with the past, foreseeing the future, and being a building of today.
So it reflects its era.
Yep. So this is the most difficult thing. A building has to be also a signature and a statement for the future as well. So yeah, this is a very difficult endeavor. This is a very difficult task. But I think it's worth trying, and this is what architecture is about. Architecture is not about copying yesterday's methods. It's not about showing off. It's not about just responding to today's needs. It has to respond. It has to be always a futuristic building. Futuristic not in sense of form, but in sense of seeing, seeing the needs of the future. So. This is my modest point of view.
And speaking of that, how do you, for example, incorporate, let's say, local materials or traditional techniques into your projects?
Look, well, we are as a group, like, we go back to the roots of architecture. I will state again the Vitruvian triad or the Vitruvian attributes. Okay, 𝗕𝗿𝗵𝗵𝗁, utilitas, venustas, which means firmness of a building, utility,
and beauty,
and also delight. So in other words, and now like more simple English, I would say that construction integrity is always a thing. So I firmly believe, Konstantinos, I'm sorry, but of course form follows function and form follows structure. So structure would always be seen. No lies are allowed in architecture. Architecture, there was a very important Greek architect named Konstantinos who said, like, architecture is a very important, a very serious thing to do whatever we like. So, so I very much believe in structural integrity, in functionality, and those two terms are attractiveness. We're not artists to do sculptures. We're not pretend to be sculptures, although my name is comes from answering sculpture. So what we can do as architects, we can respect nature, we can respect culture, we can do firm and structurally integrated structures, and very functional ones that will stand now and will stand in the future as well. And we respond to the needs of today. We will try to see the needs of tomorrow, and we will be in a very close dialogue with the past. And we have a lot of past in this country. Hopefully we have future. Thank you.
Konstantinos, you talked about emotions and about moments. So how would you define the architecture of this era?
Of this what?
This era, the times that we are in.
I think there's plenty of great examples of architecture which follow different set of values. So it's really difficult to put a finger. I can only talk about what inspires us and what motivates us. So for us, what is motivating is to create something which has a strong set of values. And these values is like a moral compass. So it always points to the truth. And that's kind of how we get the results.
So different values, let's say.
Yeah.
Would that be different from a project to another?
Of course, every project is unique, and it's an opportunity to redefine things and reset the clock and reimagine how living in that situation is. I mean, every plot is different, every owner is different.
Every function is different.
And culture is different, but also it's a different moment in different space, so it has to be unique.
I would want to open up the questions to the audience before we continue. Do you have any questions specific to any project or in general?
We did very well.
I think we explained everything.
I think we're on time. Okay, Muto, we have a question here.
Αν δεν σας πειράζει να μιλήσω ελληνικά.
Can you put the mic up so we can hear you?
Ναι. Η ερώτησή μου είναι προς την κυρία Vogiatzi. Ήθελα να σας ρωτήσω πώς αντιμετωπίσατε τη σκίαση, το πρόβλημα της σκίασης στο ξενοδοχείο με την καμπυλότητα που είχε η οροφή.
Can I reply in English?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So the question was, how did we solve the shading issue between? I understand between the balconies, right? So it's all about the orientation. Definitely, our building has 4 facades. We have east to west. Even if we had a complete, linear slab, we would still have in some portion, the issue with the shading. We usually would solve that through the orientation and the calculations of the sun path. But in this particular case, it was just, impossible to solve in all 4 facades throughout. But thank you.
Ευχαριστώ.
Yeah, in that sense, how did you manage, how did you look at sustainability in general in your adaptive reuse project?
How we do our adaptive use project?
Yeah, in terms of like the sustainable, let's say, criteria for this, how did you look at energy efficiency, ventilation, etc.? So can you tell us a bit about those different aspects?
I think the most important thing when you do a project that is existing is to keep as much as possible of the existing structure, right? And minimize the effect that you have. When you do a new structure, you use new materials, when you reuse a building, you have the first point that we would say it's important you reuse the existing structure. On top of that, we work with material, like in this specific project, we didn't have that, but there are other projects that we use the material that we extract from the land, from the landscape. Generally, we take care of elements like we source material from a close proximity, naturally, Greek marbles, stones, and other materials. And obviously, we are speaking about sustainability. It means that we take care of the energy efficiency and other kind of these mechanical methods of incorporation.
And continuing the conversation about sustainability, Eirini, you mentioned the fact that if you're digging the whole plot, how sustainable is that?
I beg your pardon? Is the question to me? Yeah.
It's whoever wants to answer, but I think Eirini brought up the question about if you are digging the whole plot, you know, how sustainable is that also, in your opinion?
Who are you
Alexandre,
asking
do you
it
wanna
to?
go for it?
Who are you talking to?
Either Eirini or you, whoever you wants to answer.
To both of you.
Well, for me, what you take out to make the stone walls make sense, what you take out to make anything else should be used to make the landscaping or things like that. Otherwise, then it's a waste of energy, money, landscape. You have to put it somewhere. It's a problem. It's a big problem. When you make really big 𝗕𝗿𝗂𝗂𝗍𝗂, you don't know what to do with tAS. So it's a problem.
Reusing what you produce during the whole process of handling a plot is important. And there is always solutions to make the most out of it. Dealing with the whole plot, managing the whole plot when you integrate is not necessarily affecting the whole plot, but naturally taking it all into account. And that, by that I mean during the design, but also during the construction, where the bigger distractions are done.
I thought that excavation could be also kind of a problematic thing here.
Excavation is always, I mean, every time that you have to intervene, an intervention is by default forceful situation. So when it's done respectfully to what you can keep, what you can preserve, what you can reuse, it's beneficial. But definitely, excavating a landscape is by its nature a forceful situation. Whether it's foundations, putting the whole building, or putting a car park in a city, it's never going to change. I mean, by nature, architecture is an intervention, and any intervention, you need to break some eggs to make an omelette.
Yeah. And there is a difference between the urban environment and the
rural, correct.
and not the urban. So in the urban environment, it is in fact in Athens specifically, there are a lot of existing buildings that are reused, and I think that's a huge factor of sustainability within the city. Whereas on the countryside, there are less structures, so there are more of excavation and more intervention into the nature.
But honestly, as an architect, I think you have to accept each time you build, especially in the landscape, it's painful.
Yeah, it's true.
It's just painful. So you have to make it worth it.
But you kept the trees.
I mean, half the truth is you have to make the building fit the landscape, and the other half is you have to make the landscape fit the building. It's a both-way system.
That's a very honest statement.
Yeah.
I agree completely, yeah.
Well,
it's a vice versa.
If no one has any other question, I think, okay, we have a question here.
Γεια σας, είμαι ο Στέλιος, αρχιτέκτονας είμαι. Θα ήθελα να πω συγχαρητήρια σε όλους τους μελετητές και να απευθύνω μια ερώτηση στον κύριο Κονδύλη. Αν έχει χρησιμοποιήσει...
Κονδύλης. Με τιμά ιδιαίτερα το Κονδύλης, αλλά δεν είμαι ο Γιώργος Κονδύλης.
Είστε καλά, με συγχωρείτε.
Κονδύλης.
Αν έχετε χρησιμοποιήσει αυτό το σύστημα με τις οπτικές φυγές που εφαρμόσατε στη μελέτη...
Θέλετε μήπως να το πείτε στα αγγλικά για να... ή θέλετε να το μεταφράσω εγώ την ερώτηση?
Ναι. Τις οπτικές φυγές, αν έχετε χρησιμοποιήσει αυτό το σύστημα και σε άλλες μελέτες σας, πιθανόν και σε κάποια άλλη κλίμακα μελέτης, δηλαδή πολεοδομικής. Ήταν πολύ ενδιαφέρουσα η προσέγγιση σας.
Okay, fine. Now, if I will translate his question.
Thank you.
So the question was if we have used as an office this system of different frames and framing the land. Look, I think that most of us here, at least three of us, have used this system. I think this is a very common practice among architects. So now we were very lucky having these plots that had these very beautiful, views, and it was the land that has driven us. It was the view has driven us to decide to do so. We don't work with a pattern. We dislike mannerism, like we're always doing this. So we are doing what the land dictates, okay? And I think most of us here, and Konstantinos said this as well before, so it's the land that dictates us. It's the land that calls us to do so, to act so. So yeah, that is. I think we've done that before, but and we're going to do that because for us it's very important that the interior and the exterior merge. There is no. We want to break boundaries. Architects are they're very very bizarre species. They make boundaries. But on the same time, they want to break the boundaries. So we build, but then we want to break what we built, in a way, metaphorically speaking, okay? So yeah, we are trying to do so in our work. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. So I guess we can wrap this up. Thank you, everyone, for your presentations, for being with us today, and for having this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.